You're tuning in to Felly's Fishbowl, a marketing podcast for the entrepreneur that wants to create a feel-good business model. On this show, you'll be given the permission slip you've been missing to make that change and start building the business you originally dreamed about. Stick around for solo and interview episodes talking all things content creation and marketing. Sound good to you? Let's dive in. Okay, welcome back everyone to another episode of Felly's Fishbowl. This week we are talking to one of my very first clients, also someone that I've invested in. It's like that lovely ecosystem of back and forth, helping each other grow as we do as women entrepreneurs. But so Sonia is the CEO and founder of Wildly Creating. She is known as a brand therapist online, which I absolutely love. She owns a branding boutique devoted to supporting and empowering online entrepreneurs to live their dream life and business. Obviously, you can see how we mash up right there, but also throw in some van life and digital nomadism, and it's like, love this. So Sonia, if you could say hello and let us know how you got into branding as a niche.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast, Ellie. And what a nice intro. I got into branding, I always say by mistake. It was not the one thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to work online because I wanted to keep traveling and not be tied to a desk or to a seasonal job. At the time, I was traveling through Australia with my van, and I was like, you know what? Let me just start doing stuff online and hope that something is gonna stick. So I started with virtual assistant jobs, which is how I met you in the first place. Then I moved to web design, and that seemed to be like my passion. And the more I was learning about web design, I discovered that I needed to have branding, or I needed to develop brand for my clients so that they could have a successful website and business. So I started to learn more about the brand, and that's how the magic happened. I could not move away from that, and branding became the number one pillar in my business.
Oh, I totally get that as someone who DIY'd their first website and didn't really understand what a brand was. Like, I can totally understand like the roadblock of people being like, well, I want a website, but not having a brand in place.
Yeah, and it's so much more than just, having the colors and,
Mm-hmm.
the fonts in place. You could have good colors and good fonts, but if you don't have a brand, you're still gonna DIY a website. It's really hard to make any website and any business strong without strong brand.
So what's your definition of a brand? Like, how would you describe it to someone who's like, well, I know what colors I have. What's missing?
Well, I always say that your brand is the experience that you're creating. It goes beyond the colors and the fonts simply because they are just a representation of the experience you want to create. So just think about the people that you want to attract, as well as the people that just eventually gonna, stumble on your page or on your website. How do you want to feel? How do you want them to feel? What feelings do you want to evoke in them? And how would you like them to approach you? That's the experience that you're creating. And it seems a little bit intangible because it's not something that you can control directly, which
Yeah.
is why you need strong branding, which can be in the forms of colors, pictures, images, words that you're using, personality of your brand. All of that are just tools that you use to control the narrative so that you can control how people are feeling.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I mean, like, we've been connected, I think, since like late 2019, maybe early 2020. So, like, I can speak for myself, but I'm curious, like, what you've seen for yourself and for your clients in terms of like how creating a branding strategy and a personal brand has helped with the personal development journey.
Yeah, I mean, I was my first ever client when it
Mm-hmm.
came to branding, and I could see the results of myself. I just wanted to be a web designer, and before that, a virtual assistant. And I was like, yeah, that's just what I'm gonna do. And I kept finding myself copying other offers, or even if it was not, 100% copy, I was taking inspiration from other people. But in reality, I was just doing what other people were doing without focusing on what Sonia wanted to do,
Mhm.
what Sonia was good at. So by developing the brand strategies, not just finding, the perfect marketing channels, the perfect font with the perfect color shade, is really about diving into the kind of business owner that you want to be, the person that you want to be in business, and create the business around that, around your lifestyle, around who you are. Yes, you have the strategy behind that, but it's also the discovery of who you are.
Mhm.
The more you know that, the more you're firm in your identity and the future of your business and the future of your life, then it's going to be so much easier to show up for yourself and so much easier to create content, to build a website, to just market your business because you're not copying. You don't have to pull from other people. You can just pull from yourself.
Like that's where you see the change with people's, like when people get their branding done and how they show up online and how they create their content or even the content in general, is like all of a sudden there's like this unapologetic air and there's no more like, I don't know, like pussyfooting for a lack of a better word, that like people like step into themselves.
Yeah, yeah, it's so beautiful to see, and you can see how the energy is different.
Hmm.
If like, of course, it's not like you have to wear your brand colors everywhere you go. It's just like the vibe that you're giving to other people, the attitude, the personality, even the words that you're using are just they just give a different meaning because they are finally relating to your brand.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because I got asked this morning, like, why is it that I teach like the framework of not having like a one size fits all business, and like I don't really teach any kind of masculine structure strategies. And she was like, where does this come from? And I was like, I'm a peaceful rebel, which is like a term you coined for me. And I was like, you can present a strategy for me and I'll say, nah, I'm not doing it. You could tell me how much money it made you or whatever, but it's just not how I work. And so it's like to be able to translate like that rebellious nature into my brand. And it's like not the rebel of like standing up at riots and screaming. It's the rebel that's like, nah, I'm going to go my own way. And so it's like I could
Yeah.
see like how my brand can encompass that, like after you created it, because I couldn't articulate it before, like.
Yeah, it's also easier for me because I'm staying on the outside of your brand.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit easier to see things that maybe you would not see or maybe you could miss. And even if, you were just my clients without being my friend, it would have still been the same. Like I could not create a personal brand without knowing the person on the other end on a human level first. So that's where I start binging all the stories, reading all the
Mhm.
newsletter, watching YouTube videos, like every channel that I can consume, I will just look at that and then see, oh, okay, I can see things overlapping. And that's just putting that together in a way that makes even more sense.
So like golden question here. What is the key to adding your personality into your brand? Because like it was something I could never do myself before I had it like laid out for me, being like, this is how you integrate them.
Yeah, so this is something that I've learned years ago. Someone mentioned that, and I thought it was absolutely stupid until I was able to actually implement this for my client.
Mhm.
And again, it might be a little bit tough when it's you doing it on yourself. And that's why I always recommend have someone, more than one person helping you out, just like ask people what is your essence. If you were to describe, like ask a friend, if you were to describe yourself, what words would they choose?
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, the real secret is to find that one trait of your personality that is you, like that is really screaming who you are, and magnify that, like really use that as much as possible. So for you, it has always been the rebelliousness,
Hmm.
but the peaceful rebelliousness, you know. I before you, I was working with another client and she was also the rebellious, but it was the active side, you know, it was the screaming and be vocal about stuff. So when I was working with you, I could see that it was the same attitude but different energy. So putting that together, like we basically magnify that. You are someone that takes naps, that you're not afraid to take a day off, you show up on stories however you want. That's a form of rebellious. And you had that in you. You maybe didn't see that.
Yeah, and that's what exactly what I was thinking while you were talking. And it's like that's why it's so beneficial to like invest in your branding because I could not see it. You know, like when I came to you, I'm
Yeah.
positive. I was like, I want my brand to be approachable because I feel like people think I'm kind of standoffish and I want it to be like fun, but kind of not necessarily like unprofessional, even though like now I totally own that word, but like I wanted it to be approachable and like accessible, you know. I wanted people to like see themselves in my business and see that like anyone could do this. But it was like
Yeah.
I just had no idea how to make that my branding.
I think what really helped with us was also finding the right picture to match your vibe. I
Hmm.
think you were struggling with that a lot, and we couldn't find the right travel pictures that were, you know, not cookie cutter, not basic bitch, but at the same time, they needed to represent who you are. Like you're living in Mexico, you don't want to live in the same place, you want to travel, but it's also a different kind of travel. You know, it's not like the
Yeah.
luxurious travel. So putting together the gallery of stock photos really helped me see, okay, I can see the tendency, I can see the rebel in Feli. I just need to put it in a way that she can also embrace it on the daily. You know, it's not an image that you're just gonna be in your brand or in your business. We need to find something that you can carry in your personal life as well.
Yeah, and that's like it really helped me, I think, with taking my own photos for when we did the website because, you know, like you look at Pinterest and you see all of the like in the kitchen with your computer, at the couch with your computer, like holding your computer standing. And I was like, no, like, yes, I work from my computer, but like my computer doesn't even need to be in the picture, you know? Like I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not going like full like lifestyle brand, like crazy fashionista pictures, but it was also like, I want something that I'm like maybe sitting at a desk, but it doesn't look like I'm serious.
Yeah, and I remember it was such a breakthrough when we implemented the picture of roller coaster. Do you remember
Hmm.
those?
Yeah,
And I think
love
those
that.
really represented your brand. It was like this fun yet vibey atmosphere
Hmm.
of like, you know, we're just spending a day at the park and we're just gonna have fun. And yes, we're also gonna do business together. And it felt, you know, approachable, fun, professional, not professional,
Mhm.
easy, accessible. There's something for everyone. It
Yeah,
was your vibe.
exactly. And I know like for you, like your journey with branding has helped you like reconnect with your roots. And it's something that I think more in the beginning of when we connected, you talked about more. So I'd love to hear like about that again. Like how did it start? Where are you at now? You know, like is the journey still going?
Oh my God, it's always going, but I
Mhm.
agree. I'm talking less about that because I'm really confident in my identity right now. And I still have doubt, I still have second thoughts, but at the same time, I'm really confident right now. But I remember I started my business as a web designer and brand strategist. I think it was 2020, May. And that was also when the whole Black Lives Matter movement exploded. And there were a lot of content on Instagram, and everyone needed to say something. It was
Mhm.
really loud period. And that was the moment where I could not, you know, I could not face all of my insecurities, all of the questions that I've been asking myself since I was a kid. And, being raised in a family, in a white family, but being mixed, I was always the Black person, even though I felt like I was white. And I was always, different. When I look at photo album, I'm the only person with African hair. I'm the only person with Black skin, even though my entire family is white. So all of those issues of, privilege, white people, Black people, it kind of all, blow up in my face
Mhm.
during that period. And that's where all of the question that I used to do for branding for my clients, I kind of use that on myself. I remember I was doing a couple of both blog posts and Instagram posts about what it was like to being Black in a white household and in a white country, because I'm from Italy. And that really resonated with a lot of people. I know it was also the period, and
Mhm.
everyone kind of resonated with anything that any Black person said. But at the same time, that gave me the platform to be like, hey, my story matters. My story needs to be heard. I need to share my story. And I started to engage with more people that look like me. And I was like, oh my God, there's an entire side of Instagram of people that are Black people, and and they're successful and they own it and they're not ashamed. They're not afraid when someone is asking them about their heritage. And I wanted to be like that. So I think it was a mix of me really wanting to explore that side of me and all the questions that I still haven't answered. They kind of got a place in my head and in my feed as well. And branding is what tied everything together, because I was able to put that into my brand and to really incorporate that. And like looking back, like from where I was in 2020 and looking where I am right now, it's so wild to think that some of my clients find me because I'm giving the vibe that they want, and especially Black people. And it might sound silly, but like it's incredible for me to see that I have such a diverse audience that before
Mhm.
it was just white people because I was afraid of working with people that look like me. And now it's just like I attract even Black people, a lot of people that I would be scared of. They are actually coming to me, and it's like, oh, all right. It's been such a wild journey.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't speak to Italy. I'm pretty sure you have a decent amount of African immigration based on like your location. But something that I always come up with as like uh, a mixed Canadian is like speaking with Americans. And I feel like the culture in America of like Black people working with Black people supporting Black people. And I'm just like, in Canada, like we don't have that. Like I had a
Mhm.
call the other day and someone's like, hey, I noticed like I'm in an ambassador program, and she's like, I'm the first Black person they've hired, so I'm just curious like if you feel represented in this group when like the other 5 team members aren't Black. And I was like, well, the owner is Asian, half the team is like different parts of Asia, so like to me it's not just all white people, but to some
Yeah,
people it's like, well, there's no Black people. And I'm like, okay, but people of color are my people, but then there's also like that next category of like, no, it's like the Black people are your people. And I didn't grow up with that culture. And like same as you, when George Floyd died and all of those Black Lives Matter blew up and everyone online wanted to follow Black people, wanted to work with Black people, I was very like uncomfortable of like, I don't want to be your token hire. I don't want you to come to me
yeah,
only because of this. And so I love like the word that you use to describe this is like finding your identity, It's like it's not so much like, okay, like what's my place online? Like who am I speaking to? It's like, no, who is my identity? And my identity is I want to be a safe space for everyone. And if you feel
yeah.
safer with me because I look like you, like cool. Like I'll hold space for you.
Yeah, 100%. I remember that period was really chaotic. There were a lot of feelings, a lot of emotion. And I think it's also like I think my upbringing is a little bit similar to yours in the sense that we kind of have in Italy Black people, but they're always seen as African immigrant that,
Mm.
with the super negative connotation, like the most negative connotation, that's the Black people, especially in
Mhm.
my city. So for me, it was always like, don't talk about that. Don't be like that. You were born and raised in Italy. You are not like them.
Mhm.
And to see everything being flipped completely on Instagram, it was like, oh my God, what is happening right now? And I was also feeling really uncomfortable. I had people sharing my content and they had never once interacted
Mhm.
with me. And it's like, thank you for resharing, thank you for giving me the platform, but at the same time, this is not genuine. So that's when I realized, okay, I need to do it for myself rather than to find my space and to find my platform. It's
Yeah.
just to find myself.
And that's how I felt. Like I didn't feel like it was genuine. I felt like I think I gained like 200 followers overnight. And it was like, okay, but like you're just following me because you realize all you do is follow white people. And that makes me uncomfortable. Like you don't actually give a shit about me. I want you to follow me because you actually like my content or you actually want to hire me, not because you're afraid of being canceled because
Yeah.
people look at your following and see you only work with people who look exactly like you, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, the same as we did the work and we understood, things about our identity, the
Mhm.
issue was not to just follow other people that were, that look different to you. It was just the different approach that you could see. And as you said, I think as I follow as well a lot of American people, I think the culture is really, really, really different. And
Mhm.
even in like now I live in Australia and it's also different. So it's yeah, a lot.
I remember being in Australia, the amount of people who would be like, "Oh, like come over to my house. Oh, by the way, my parents are racist, so they might say something to you." And I was like,
Yeah.
should I not come over?" Like, and nobody ever said anything to me. I remember going to Christmas with a friend, and she was like, "My grandma's super racist." Like we were in the middle of nowhere, and nobody said anything to me. Everything was super cool, but like the whole time I'm just sitting there like uncomfortable. Like I kind of wish you hadn't said anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah, that's another issue with Australia right now.
Mm. Yeah, like
Yeah.
thanks for the warning, but also like how uncomfortable. Like maybe just don't invite me next
Really?
time. Like
Yeah, or don't say anything.
yeah. But it's kind of like if they didn't say anything and we got there and the family member was like, "What the fuck?" Like, you invite a black person into my house, you know? So it's like, okay, like
Oh
thanks for the
my God.
warning, but
Yeah, that must have been really scary.
it was just so strange. So strange. But I mean, like, that's everything in Australia. You're kind of like, it's like open and in your face, but at the same time, you're like, okay, like maybe this shouldn't be said out loud. Like, why are you guys so okay with saying this out loud?
Yeah, yeah. And like something that I found myself that, it makes me happy, but at the same time, it makes me sad, like really sad. When I'm walking around or driving around and I see someone that is black, I would be like, oh, there is a black person.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's like, you should not, it's not because it's not polite, it's none of that. It's like, why should you notice that if someone is looking different? Like, why is it so white?
Mm.
It's like you can really count Black people or people of color on your fingers when you go outside. And I guess that is also why it's creating even more, racist issues. If you don't have diversity, that's how you get this issue.
Yeah, and it's like I said before, like for me growing up, it was kind of like people of color versus white versus like black people of color, like black and then people of color and then white people, And so it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in Vancouver. It's got a very, very small black population. Most of our immigration is Asian countries, like all over Asia. And
Mhm.
so it was really interesting to like go to the States or like meet Black Americans and like especially like working online and people are like, oh my God, like a Black person, like so excited, like I want to be your friend, you're a Black person. And I'm just like, I
Yeah.
don't like why does this mean we have to be friends? Like I don't understand.
Yeah, 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 it's very different. But I feel like in that period, like 2020, that's where I also felt a lot of like being the token of everyone, like being friend, like everyone wanted to be with me or like asking me question. I had people telling me, "Oh, I'm so proud of you for for because you shared your story." I was like, "How can you be proud of me? You never talked with me once."
Yeah, and I'm like, but
And
everybody who's a business owner is supposed to get up and share their story. Like, I'm not special or unique because I shared mine.
yeah,
Everybody else is doing the same thing.
yeah, it was a weird period, but I'm really happy for the confidence that it gave me
Mhm.
back.
Yeah, like the outcome of it, because it was the same for me. Like, I at first was like, oh, cool, like we can blow up right now. And then I was like, oh no, I don't want this attention. Like, this isn't the
Yeah,
attention I'm looking for. These aren't the clients I want to work with. And
yeah.
honestly, I like ghosted after like, I mean, June 2020 is like kind of when my business like went into lost phase, and I feel like I didn't come out till this year. So it's like it was, yeah, like a big part of me being like, what am I doing? Like, who do I actually want to work with? Like, what's actually the purpose of my business?
Yeah,
And
that's where
it
you,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it was an identity crisis.
Ah, that's so interesting because I feel like with your brand, we were able to tie everything together like
Hmm.
to a T.
And also, like with my branding as someone who's like a hybrid business owner, I felt like I was finally able to like really separate them. And I have this conversation with people all the time of like, do you actually need to separate? Like I have a divide between my offers of like, yes, I work with people one on one, but I also run an agency. And some people would just kind of be like, I'm an entrepreneur and like these are my services. And I like having it separated. I like having the two sides as their own but connected, because I think it helps me compartmentalize. And especially as I pull myself out of the day to day of the agency and like only really focus on the marketing and sales side of it, like I really like that there's such a divide between the two.
Yeah, I like what you said because I don't think it's for everyone, but it was definitely what you were looking for and
Mhm.
what you were feeling a little bit lost. Not lost, but like confused. It was
I'm
like,
fully
this is
lost.
what I do, but I'm, yeah, also lost. This is what I do, this is who I am, but at the same time, I'm also this and I'm also that.
All right, I'm going to ask you the last question before we move into rapid fire questions. What are some common setbacks or some mindset shifts that you see people like get hung up on when they start their personal branding journey?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is people really skip everything and they go to the color palette and the mood board. And I get it, is what most people would say. Like, if you take any basic start your business one-on-one course, it's like, take care of your branding, find your colors, and
Mhm.
go. But I think that is also the issue. We're not creating a personal brand, you're just creating another account with
Mhm.
similar colors that people can relate to. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm just saying this is not how you can build a business that is staying for the future. I started my brand and my business with super shit color that I would never pick right now. And they were just trendy color that they were working at the time. And I'm glad that I went with that. I'm super glad that I didn't go straight into a brand strategy because I needed to kind of understand what was this business about, what were my services, and I just needed to do the thing before working on how I actually wanted to do the thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I had my first clients, and it didn't matter what my branding was, but it matters now because I don't want to have just a couple of clients. I want to have some very specific clients, and I want my
Mhm.
business to be like built around my lifestyle, not my lifestyle around the business.
Yeah,
So
and that's
it's
something
just
that
a
can go ahead.
no, it's just like a growth section. It's like you grow into a different person, and that's when you know that you need brand.
Yeah, and like a brand isn't forever, I think it does evolve, and it doesn't necessarily mean like everything's going to change, but like for me, I still have basically the same red that I started with, but all the other colors changed because for so long I just had 3 colors and I struggled so hard with graphics because you need more than 3 colors. And I changed fonts so many times. Like fonts meant nothing to me. And it's like, I look at like you can see the evolution of my branding. And I basically reached a point where I had outgrown it. And I was like, this isn't working for me. Nothing I do looks to the caliber that I want it to be at. Everything looks DIY'd and it's not calling in the clients that I want. Like I want to run an agency that attracts high level clients, and I'm messing around with the same like the Moontime font that everyone else is using, and my business just looks basic.
Yes, you describe it perfectly because I feel like that's when people should invest into brand. I know
Mhm.
a lot of people are like, oh, but you don't need branding when you're starting out. And I agree, you don't need it. You need to make your own mistakes. You need to
Mhm.
make your first clients, your first graphics. You need to work with sheet branding so that you understand when it's time that you have been growing, that you have been evolving, and that it's time to rebrand. So when you get to that point where you feel like, this worked fine, but this is not me anymore, and this
Mhm.
is not pointing into the direction that I want to go, that's when you know you need professional branding or you need help around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Such an interesting journey, the personal brand journey.
Yeah, yeah, I love it because of that. There's so many things that you can take into account. And it's not just the business, it's really deeply tied to who you are as a person.
Yeah. And that's what I love because it's like that's what helps you stand out and that's what makes you unique. Is like you get to build it around you. And so then it can never be the same as anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. And it's when you also have that feeling, that desire of being different rather than the desire of being similar to other people, because sometimes it's just because you're afraid of doing your own thing. And
Mhm.
I get it. I really get it. But when you have that desire of being you, of being different, of being unique, that's a very good sign that you have been outgrowing your brand and it's time for something new.
All right. Any final statements before we move to rapid fire questions?
Ah, no, I'm excited for the next part.
I love how excited people are because I was like, I just want to include this. This like probably the first podcast I ever listened to. Oh, if only I could remember what it was called. They did rapid fire questions, and I was like, this is great. I love it. And I change the questions every time because I don't want it to get boring. But it's just four. Whoa, losing my voice. Just four simple questions, and I just want you to give the first answer that comes to mind, and then we'll close this out. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
All right. Would you rather be hot or cold?
Hot
Pasta or pizza?
pizza.
I had to ask. What's your favorite shape?
Circle.
Yeah. And out of all the languages you speak, which one do you prefer the most?
Portuguese.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
See, I
I
only know
mean,
like the Brazilian Portuguese, and I don't like it.
I think it's much better. The Portuguese from Portugal doesn't really sound like Portuguese. It sounds more like Polish.
It's funny because like the first time I heard Spanish spoken by someone from Spain, I was like, it sounds awful. They sound like they
Yeah.
have a list, and like the Latin Spanish is so beautiful. Like, how did this come out of that? Like,
I agree. I feel like all countries that have been colonized, they actually have the best accent.
the
And
accent's better
like the
than the
fun
original.
fact, yeah, the fun fact about Portuguese is that Portuguese with Brazilian accent is so popular that it's overtaking Portuguese from Portugal. So now the standard is the Brazilian Portuguese. So if you go
Yeah.
to a class, usually you're learning Brazilian Portuguese because it's just more common.
Wow. I mean, I would not be surprised that Brazil has more
Yeah.
people because it's a massive country. But
Yeah, and Portugal is so small.
yeah, like Portugal is this tiny little edge. But that's cool. Cool fun fact. Good to know. I mean, maybe one day I'll make it. the Frenchman's been to Brazil and he loved it, but I think we're heading the other direction, you know. I'd probably end up in Portugal before I end up in Brazil, sadly.
Yeah, and it's still gonna be okay.
Yeah, I'll get used to it. I need to hear someone from Portugal speak with a Portuguese accent before I like write off the whole language as not my favorite.
Oh, yes, no, you'll be shocked.
Yeah, if it's anything like Spain Spanish versus Latin American Spanish, oh, I'm sure it's absolutely different.
Yes, yeah, it's not a song anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's like so nice. It's a nice melody, but at the same time, the melody like throws me off, you know? I find it hard to
Mm.
concentrate.
But I feel like maybe because it's also English, like English is your first language, right?
Yeah, no melody.
And yeah, no, and whatsoever. And I feel like it's so hard for me, Italian is my first language and my mother language. And it's so hard for me to, like, it was hard to remove my accent, although
Mm,
I'm so happy that I did huge progress. But still, it's like you can tell that I'm not native English native speaker,
mhm.
but it's because without the melody, I feel like it's so hard to convey the message.
Yeah, and that's like been my biggest struggle with learning Spanish is that it is a tonal language. And if I change the way I say words, then it's a new word. And I'm just like, I'm used to speaking my West Coast English with my everything goes down at the end. There's
Yeah.
just one set melody for every single sentence, no matter the words. And so it's very interesting to learn new languages and to speak to people who speak multiple languages and like see, you know, because I mean, like for the Frenchman, for example, I see him when he speaks French, he has such a deep bass voice, and then when he speaks Spanish, it's like his face lights up and he gets like so like full body into it, you know? And it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
the way that you speak, especially Latin languages, like with your body, with your face, with your tone, it's like it's beautiful.
Yeah, like in Italy, if you were to say the same sentence with two different tone of voice, it could be completely different. Even if the meaning is the same, it could be a completely different topic.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just beautiful to see, how language shape behavior as well. It's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It changes your behavior, like when you speak it and how you express yourself. So very cool.
Mm.
Could you let everybody know where to find you, what you have going on right now?
Yeah, so my handle is the same for everything. So Sonia at Wildly Creating. My website is wildlycreating.com. And yeah, so right now going on, this is December when we're recording this, and I am on a mental break.
Yeah.
So I'm just in the process of birthing my business again in a new Sonia. I'm basically doing a rebrand for my brand. So it's a very exciting moment. But in January, I'm gonna come back and it's gonna mostly be programs and resources to build a brand like deeply interlaced with your personality and the lifestyle that you want to build. So in the meantime, what you could do is take my quiz at wallycreating.com/quiz, and that is gonna help you find your perfect branding through pancake flavors.
The best quiz I've ever seen, like
It's
hands
super
down.
cool.
Also, I love that you did a quiz like from the start, you know. I
Yeah.
have so many like PDFs and downloadables, and now I can see like quizzes are taking over. All these people are like raving like how much data you can collect from quizzes, but it also like makes it fun for your audience. And I'm like, maybe a year from now when I figure my shit out, like a quiz would be a good idea. But like your quiz is so good and it's so on brand.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it took me a long time to put that together,
Mm,
but it's fun and it's honestly it's my best performing freebie because people love to take quizzes. It's
yeah,
like a way where you can just learn about yourself, talk about yourself, and have results tailored to yourself. I feel like
exactly.
everyone had the checklist or a cheat sheet or whatever guides, but at the same time, you read that once and that's it. I
Yeah.
never go
Yeah.
back to my freebies.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like you read it once and then you delete it.
Yeah, and I am unsubscribed right away.
Oh, same. I
Like
did that.
I just get what I wanted and then that's it. Well, with the quiz, like you obviously got an email sequence that is not talking about me and who I am, although one email might be about that. But it's about, giving you the results and explaining how you can build a brand with that, what colors, what vibe, what is the next step. So it's a different journey.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for coming. This is a great episode. I'm excited to have people listen to it. And yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Finally, we made this happen.
Yeah, finally I launched a show, right? All right, so if you want to go find Sonia, she's everywhere online at Wildly Creating, and I will catch you all next week with another episode of Felly's Fishbowl.